The first gunshot echoed across the plains like distant thunder, sending a flock of startled birds into the crimson sky. Felicity Rowe clutched her swollen belly and pressed herself against the weather-beaten wall of the abandoned barn, her heart pounding wildly in her chest. 6 months pregnant and on the run, she had nowhere to go and no one to turn to in this unforgiving land. The year was 1875, and the Dakota Territory offered little mercy to a woman alone. Felicity had been traveling west with a wagon train when news reached them that her husband had been killed in a mining accident. The grief had nearly broken her, but the child growing inside her kept her moving forward. Then came the robbery. Bandits had attacked their caravan 3 days ago, scattering the travelers and leaving her to fend for herself. She had managed to escape with nothing but the clothes on her back and a small bundle of possessions. The second gunshot was closer. Felicity pressed her palms against her ears, tears streaming down her dirt-streaked face. She had been hiding in the dilapidated barn since sunrise, hoping to rest before continuing her journey to the nearest settlement. But now, it seemed that trouble had found her once again. The barn door creaked open. Felicity held her breath, her fingers gripping a rusty pitchfork she had found among the moldy hay. She would not go down without a fight. "Hello," a deep voice called out. "Anyone in here?" Felicity remained silent, her knuckles white around the handle of her makeshift weapon. "I mean no harm," the voice continued. "I'm just looking for shelter from those raiders passing through." The man stepped further into the barn, and the fading sunlight revealed a tall figure in a worn leather duster. His face was partially obscured by the shadow of his wide-brimmed hat, but she could make out a strong jawline covered in stubble. A revolver hung at his hip, but his hands were raised, showing he meant no threat. "I know you're in here," he said, his voice softer now. "I saw footprints leading in. I'm not with those men. Name's Lucas Morgan. I'm a rancher from White River Valley, about 20 miles west of here." Felicity's arms trembled from holding the pitchfork aloft. Her strength was failing her, and she knew she couldn't maintain this standoff much longer. With a deep breath, she stepped out from her hiding place. "Don't come any closer," she warned, her voice shakier than she intended. Lucas stopped, his eyes widening slightly as he took in her condition. "Madam, I promise I'm not here to cause you trouble. Those men outside are troublemakers from Deadwood. I've been tracking them since they raided my neighbor's homestead yesterday." Another shot rang out, this one even closer than before. Felicity flinched, nearly dropping her weapon. "We need to move," Lucas said urgently. "They're searching every building in the area. Is there anywhere else you can hide?" "I don't know," Felicity admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "I'm not from around here." Lucas took a careful step forward. "Madam, I know you have no reason to trust me, but those men will be here any minute if they find you." He didn't need to finish the sentence. Felicity made a quick decision. "My name is Felicity Rowe. My husband is dead and I have nowhere to go." Lucas nodded solemnly. "Mrs. Rowe, there's a root cellar underneath this barn. If we can get you down there, they might pass through without noticing." Before she could respond, the sound of approaching horses filled the air. Lucas moved with surprising speed, locating the trapdoor hidden beneath a pile of straw. He pulled it open to reveal a dark hole in the ground. "Quickly," he urged, offering his hand. Felicity hesitated for only a moment before dropping the pitchfork and allowing him to guide her toward the cellar. The stairs were steep and rotten, making the descent treacherous. "I cannot move quickly," she apologized, one hand protectively cradling her belly. "Take your time," Lucas assured her, supporting her elbow as she navigated the dangerous steps. "Just be careful." Once they were safely below, Lucas pulled the trapdoor closed above them, plunging them into near total darkness. A small shaft of light filtered through a crack in the wooden planks, providing just enough illumination for them to see each other's faces. The cellar was damp and smelled of earth and decay. Felicity fought against the rising panic in her chest as she heard boots stomping on the floorboards above them. Lucas placed a gentle hand on her shoulder, offering silent reassurance. "Check every corner," a gruff voice commanded overhead. "That cowboy can't have gotten far." Felicity and Lucas remained motionless, barely breathing as the men searched the barn. Minutes stretched into what felt like hours before the footsteps finally receded and the voices faded into the distance. "I think they're gone," Lucas whispered after several more minutes of silence. Felicity nodded, suddenly overwhelmed by exhaustion. The adrenaline that had kept her going was rapidly dissipating, leaving her light-headed and weak. "Mrs. Rowe." Lucas's concerned voice seemed to come from very far away. "Are you all right?" "I just need to sit," she managed to say before her knees buckled beneath her. Lucas caught her before she hit the ground, his strong arms preventing what could have been a dangerous fall. He gently lowered her to sit on an old crate, kneeling before her with worry etched across his features. "When was the last time you ate or drank anything?" he asked, his eyes studying her pale face. Felicity tried to remember. "Yesterday, I think. I had some jerky and a little water from a stream." Lucas reached into his saddlebag and produced a canteen and a small package wrapped in cloth. "Drink this," he insisted, uncorking the canteen and placing it in her hands. "And try to eat something. It's just cornbread and dried venison, but it's better than nothing." Felicity accepted his offerings gratefully, the cool water bringing immediate relief to her parched throat. As she ate small bites of the food, Lucas checked the trapdoor again, listening for any signs of the raiders' return. "It seems they've moved on," he reported, climbing back down the steps. "But we should wait a bit longer to be safe." Felicity nodded, already feeling stronger after the modest meal. "Thank you, Mr. Morgan. I don't know what would have happened if you hadn't come along." "Call me Lucas," he replied with a small smile, "and anyone would have done the same." "No," Felicity said quietly. "Not anyone." She had learned that harsh lesson during her journey west. There were good people in the world, but there were also those who would take advantage of a woman in her vulnerable state. Lucas settled himself on the ground nearby, giving her space while remaining close enough to converse. "If you don't mind my asking, where were you headed before all this happened?" Felicity sighed. "I was traveling with a wagon train to Fort Laramie. My husband, Thomas, was a miner who went ahead to establish a claim. I received word a month ago that he died in a cave-in." Her voice cracked slightly. "I have a cousin in San Francisco who said I could stay with her until the baby comes." Lucas remained silent for a moment, his expression somber. "I'm sorry for your loss, Mrs. Rowe. Please call me Felicity," she replied. "And thank you." As they sat in the dim cellar waiting for safety, Felicity studied the man who had come to her aid. Lucas Morgan appeared to be in his early 30s, with a weathered face that spoke of years under the open sky. His eyes were a clear blue that reminded her of the Montana skies she had passed beneath weeks earlier. Despite his rugged appearance, there was a gentleness to him that put her at ease. "You mentioned you're a rancher," she asked, partly to distract herself from their precarious situation and partly out of genuine curiosity. Lucas nodded. "Got a modest spread about 20 miles west of here. Nothing fancy, but it's mine. Raise cattle mostly, some horses. It's honest work." "You're out here alone." "I have a few ranch hands who help with the cattle, but they're back at the ranch. I came out on my own when I heard about the raiders." He paused, then added, "My wife died 3 years ago. Fever took her and our newborn son." Felicity's heart ached for him. "I'm so sorry." "It was hard," he acknowledged, his voice quiet, But life goes on, doesn't it? We keep moving forward because we must. His words resonated deeply with her. That was exactly what she had been doing since learning of Thomas's death, moving forward because there was no other choice. As darkness fell outside, Lucas decided it was safe enough to leave their hiding place. He helped Felicity up the rickety stairs, his hand steady and sure beneath her elbow. The barn was silent now, illuminated only by moonlight streaming through the gaps in the wooden walls. "What will you do now?" Lucas asked as they stood in the empty building. Felicity wrapped her arms around herself, suddenly aware of how alone she truly was. "Continue to Fort Laramie, I suppose. From there, I can try to find passage to California." Lucas frowned. "That's at least a week's journey from here, and that's with a good horse and favorable conditions. On foot, pregnant." He trailed off, not needing to elaborate on the dangers such a journey would pose. "I don't have many options," Felicity replied, trying to keep her voice steady. Lucas seemed to consider something for a moment before speaking again. "My ranch is closer. You could rest there for a few days, regain your strength. I have a wagon that could take you to Fort Laramie when you're ready." Felicity hesitated. Going to a stranger's isolated ranch was risky, yet Lucas had already proven himself trustworthy, and the prospect of a safe place to rest was tempting beyond measure. "I would be a burden to you," she said finally, voicing her primary concern. Lucas shook his head firmly. "You wouldn't be. I have plenty of space and supplies, and frankly, it would ease my conscience knowing you're safe." Felicity weighed her options. She could continue alone, risking exhaustion, starvation, or worse. Or she could accept the help being offered and give herself and her unborn child a better chance. "All right," she agreed at last. "If you're certain it's no trouble, I would be grateful for a place to rest before continuing my journey." Relief washed over Lucas's face. "Good. My horse is hidden in the trees nearby. We'll have to ride double, but thunder's strong enough to carry us both for a while." They left the barn cautiously, Lucas leading the way with his revolver drawn. The night was quiet except for the chirping of crickets and the occasional hoot of an owl. True to his word, a large black gelding was tethered among the trees a short distance away. Thunder snorted softly as they approached, recognizing his master. Lucas patted the horse's neck before turning to Felicity. "I'll help you up first, then mount behind you," he explained. "It'll be more comfortable that way." With Lucas's assistance, Felicity managed to seat herself sideways on the saddle, her condition making traditional riding impossible. Lucas swung up behind her, one arm securely around her waist to keep her steady. "Ready?" he asked, his voice close to her ear. Felicity nodded, too tired to feel embarrassed by their proximity. Lucas clicked his tongue, and Thunder began moving at a steady walk, carrying them away from the abandoned barn and into the vast darkness of the prairie. The journey to Lucas's ranch was slow but uneventful. They traveled through the night, stopping occasionally to rest the horse and for Felicity to stretch her legs. By the time the sun began to rise, painting the eastern horizon in shades of gold and pink, they could see a cluster of buildings in the distance. "That's it," Lucas said, a note of pride in his voice. "White River Ranch." As they drew closer, Felicity could make out a modest but well-maintained homestead. The main house was constructed of rough-hewn logs with a stone chimney. Several outbuildings surrounded it: a barn, bunkhouse, and what appeared to be a workshop. A corral containing several horses stood nearby, and beyond that, she could see cattle grazing on the rolling grassland. Two men emerged from the bunkhouse as they approached, their expressions curious but not hostile. "Mr. Morgan," the older of the two called out, striding toward them. "We were starting to worry. Did you find those raiders?" "They've moved north, Frank," Lucas replied as he brought Thunder to a halt. "This is Mrs. Felicity Rowe. She'll be staying with us for a while." Frank nodded respectfully to Felicity, his weathered face revealing nothing of what he might think about his employer bringing home a pregnant stranger. "Madam." Lucas dismounted first, then helped Felicity down. Her legs nearly gave way after the long ride, but Lucas steadied her with a firm grip on her elbow. "Frank, could you ask Mrs. Peterson to prepare a room for our guest, and perhaps draw a bath?" Lucas requested. "Of course, sir," Frank replied, already turning toward the main house. The younger ranch hand took Thunder's reins. "I'll take care of your horse, boss." "Thanks, Jimmy," Lucas said with a nod. As the men went about their tasks, Lucas guided Felicity toward the house. "Mrs. Peterson is my housekeeper," he explained. "She lives in town but comes out to the ranch most days to cook and keep things in order. She's a good woman, lost her husband at Shiloh." Felicity was only half listening, overwhelmed by the sudden transition from danger to safety. The past 24 hours seemed almost dreamlike now, standing in the early morning sunlight with solid ground beneath her feet. The inside of the ranch house was simple but comfortable, with sturdy furniture and clean, swept floors. A large stone fireplace dominated one wall of the main room, and a dining table sat near windows that overlooked the eastern pasture. Mrs. Peterson proved to be a plump, no-nonsense woman in her 50s who took Felicity's arrival in stride. "Land's sake, Mr. Morgan, you certainly know how to surprise a body," she said when Lucas introduced them. "Well, come along, Mrs. Rowe. Let's get you settled. You look about ready to drop." Felicity found herself whisked away to a modest but clean bedroom where Mrs. Peterson efficiently prepared a bath in a copper tub before the fire. The older woman helped Felicity out of her travel-stained clothes and into the warm water, clucking sympathetically at the sight of her swollen feet and the dark circles under her eyes. "How far along are you, dear?" Mrs. Peterson asked as she helped Felicity wash her hair. 6 months or thereabouts," Felicity replied, luxuriating in the simple pleasure of being clean for the first time in weeks. "And traveling alone in your condition. The world's gone mad, I tell you. Well, you just rest here for a spell. Mr. Morgan's a good man, he'll see you're taken care of properly." After the bath, Felicity was provided with a clean nightgown and robe that Mrs. Peterson said belonged to Lucas's late wife. "They've been packed away," the housekeeper explained. "But I'm sure she wouldn't mind them being put to good use." Clean, fed, and exhausted beyond measure, Felicity fell into a deep sleep as soon as her head touched the pillow. When she awoke, the room was bathed in the golden light of late afternoon. For a moment she was disoriented, not recognizing her surroundings. Then the memories of the previous day came flooding back: the raiders, the barn, Lucas Morgan coming to her rescue. A soft knock sounded at the door. "Mrs. Rowe," Lucas's voice called. "Are you awake?" "Yes," she replied, sitting up and adjusting the borrowed robe around her shoulders. "Please come in." Lucas entered, carrying a tray with a steaming bowl of stew and a chunk of fresh bread. "Mrs. Peterson thought you might be hungry," he said, setting the tray on the bedside table. "You slept through breakfast and dinner." Felicity's stomach rumbled at the smell of the food. "How long was I asleep?" "Nearly a full day," Lucas replied with a small smile. "You needed the rest." As Felicity ate, Lucas sat in a chair by the window, updating her on events since their arrival. "The sheriff from White River Station came by this morning. Those raiders were caught trying to rob the bank in Fairfield, about 30 miles north of here. There was a shootout, and most of them were either killed or captured." Felicity felt a surge of relief. "So they won't be coming back this way?" "No, madam. You're safe here." Lucas hesitated, then added, "I've been thinking about your situation. The next wagon train to Fort Laramie won't pass through White River Station for at least 2 weeks. In the meantime, you're welcome to stay here." "That's very generous," Felicity said, genuinely moved by his kindness. "But I've imposed on you enough already." "It's no imposition," Lucas insisted. "And frankly, it wouldn't be right to send you off on your own again, especially now." Felicity knew he was right. Her journey had already been far more dangerous than she had anticipated, and the baby was her priority now. "Thank you," she said finally. "I accept your offer at least until the next wagon train." Lucas seemed pleased by her decision. "Good. Now, if you're feeling up to it, Mrs. Peterson left some clothes that might fit you. They belong to her daughter, who's about your size. She thought you might like to have something clean to wear." The following days established a peaceful routine at White River Ranch. Felicity regained her strength rapidly, thanks to regular meals and proper rest. Mrs. Peterson fussed over her like a mother hen, ensuring she ate well and didn't overexert herself. Lucas was often busy with the work of the ranch, but he made time each evening to sit with Felicity on the porch, watching the sunset and talking about their lives. Felicity learned that Lucas had come west from Pennsylvania after the war, using his savings to purchase land in the Dakota Territory. He had built the ranch from nothing, surviving drought, harsh winters, and occasional Indian raids to establish one of the more successful operations in the area. "It wasn't easy," he told her one evening as they sat watching the fading light paint the distant mountains in purple and gold. "Those first winters nearly broke me, but I'm stubborn, I guess." "It takes more than stubbornness to build something like this," Felicity observed, gesturing to the well-maintained ranch. "It takes vision and determination." Lucas shrugged, uncomfortable with the praise. "What about you? What was your life like before coming west?" Felicity told him about growing up in Boston, the daughter of a schoolteacher and a clerk. She had met Thomas at a church social when she was 19, and they had married a year later. "Thomas was always restless," she explained. "He believed there were opportunities out west that we would never find in Boston. When he heard about the gold strikes in the Black Hills, nothing would do but that we try our luck." "And now," Lucas asked gently, "what do you hope for now?" Felicity placed a hand on her rounded belly, feeling the baby shift beneath her palm. "To give this child a good life, to find some measure of peace and security." Lucas nodded, his eyes thoughtful as he gazed out over his land. Good goals, simple but not easy. As the days passed, Felicity found herself increasingly drawn to the quiet rancher. Lucas Morgan was unlike any man she had known before, strong yet gentle, competent yet humble. He treated his ranch hands with respect and kindness, spoke softly to nervous horses, and never failed to express gratitude for Mrs. Peterson's cooking. He was a man comfortable in his skin, unburdened by the need to prove himself to others. For his part, Lucas seemed to enjoy Felicity's company. He began to arrange his work schedule to allow more time around the house, often inviting her to accompany him on short rides around the property, or to help with simple tasks that wouldn't strain her in her condition. On one such occasion, Lucas was showing Felicity the vegetable garden behind the house, a plot Mrs. Peterson maintained for fresh produce. "The soil here is surprisingly good," Lucas explained, crouching to demonstrate how dark and rich the earth was. "We get enough rain most years to grow just about anything that can handle the short growing season." As he stood, he noticed Felicity staring at something in the distance. Following her gaze, he saw a hawk circling high above the eastern pasture, its wings spread wide as it rode the thermals. "Red-tailed hawk," he said. "They nest in the cottonwoods by the river." "It's beautiful," Felicity murmured, shading her eyes to watch the bird's graceful flight. "So free." Lucas studied her profile, noting the wistfulness in her expression. "Do you miss the East?" he asked. Felicity considered the question. "I miss certain things, bookshops, concerts, the changing of the leaves in autumn, but there's something about this land that speaks to me, the openness of it, the honesty." "I know what you mean," Lucas said with a smile. "First time I saw these plains, I felt like I could breathe properly for the first time in my life." Their eyes met, and something passed between them, a moment of shared understanding that neither was quite ready to acknowledge. Felicity looked away first, her cheeks coloring slightly. "I should help Mrs. Peterson with dinner," she said, turning back toward the house. Lucas watched her go, a complex mix of emotions playing across his features before he returned to his work. That evening, as they sat on the porch after dinner, a comfortable silence settled between them. The first stars were appearing in the darkening sky, and somewhere in the distance, a coyote called to its pack. "Mrs. Peterson mentioned that the wagon train will be passing through White River Station next week," Lucas said finally, breaking the quiet. Felicity felt a sudden tightness in her chest. "Yes, she told me as well. I've been thinking," Lucas continued, his voice careful. "The journey to Fort Laramie will be difficult, even with a wagon train, and from there to San Francisco. It's a long, hard road for anyone, let alone a woman in your condition." "I'm stronger now," Felicity said, though without much conviction. The thought of leaving the safety and comfort of White River Ranch filled her with dread. Lucas turned to face her directly. "Felicity, I have a proposition for you. Stay here at least until after the baby is born. You'd have proper care, a roof over your head, and plenty of food. Mrs. Peterson has already volunteered to midwife when your time comes." Felicity was stunned by the offer. "Lucas, I couldn't possibly." "Why not?" he interrupted gently. "You've said yourself that you have no particular ties to San Francisco beyond your cousin, whom you haven't seen in years. Here, you have people who care about your welfare." The sincerity in his blue eyes made her heart beat faster. "People?" she asked softly. Lucas held her gaze steadily. "Yes, Mrs. Peterson has grown quite fond of you. Frank and Jimmy think you're a fine lady, and I—" He paused, seeming to search for the right words. "I would rest easier knowing you and the baby were safe." It wasn't a declaration of love, but there was something in his voice that suggested deeper feelings than mere concern for her welfare. Felicity found herself at a crossroads, torn between the path she had planned and the unexpected opportunity before her. "I would be a burden to you," she said at last, voicing her deepest fear. "A pregnant widow with no means to support herself or her child." Lucas's response was immediate and firm. "Then I'll carry you proudly." The simple statement, delivered without hesitation or qualification, brought tears to Felicity's eyes. No one had ever offered her such unconditional support, such acceptance of her needs without expecting anything in return. "Why would you do this for me?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Lucas looked away, his gaze settling on the distant horizon. "After Sarah died, my wife, I thought I'd never want to share my life with anyone again. The pain was too great, but these past weeks, having you here—" He turned back to her, his expression open and vulnerable. "The house feels like a home again. There's laughter and conversation. I find myself looking forward to the evenings when we sit together." Felicity's heart swelled with emotion she had been trying to suppress since arriving at White River Ranch. "I felt it too," she admitted. "This sense of belonging, of rightness." "Then stay," Lucas urged, taking her hand in his. "Not out of charity or obligation, but because this could be the beginning of something good for both of us." Felicity looked down at their joined hands, considering all that his offer implied. "I need time to think," she said finally. Lucas nodded, releasing her hand. "Of course." There's no rush to decide. But Felicity knew that wasn't entirely true. The wagon train would arrive in a week, and she would need to make her choice before then. The next few days were filled with quiet contemplation for Felicity. She went about her usual activities helping Mrs. Peterson in the kitchen, tending the vegetable garden, walking the gentle paths around the ranch house, but her mind was constantly weighing her options. Staying at White River Ranch meant placing her trust completely in Lucas Morgan, a man she had known for less than a month. It meant setting aside her plans to reach San Francisco and establishing a new life in the Dakota Territory, a harsh and sometimes unforgiving land. Yet, when she imagined continuing her journey west, the prospect filled her with dread rather than hope. And when she thought of leaving Lucas and the comfortable routine they had established, an ache settled in her chest that couldn't be dismissed. On the afternoon before she needed to give her decision, Felicity walked to the small rise behind the ranch house, a quiet spot where she could see for miles in every direction. The August sun was warm on her face as she settled on a flat rock, her hands resting on her belly where the baby kicked energetically. "What should I do, little one?" she murmured. "Where will we find our happiness? Talking to yourself is the first sign of prairie madness, or so they say." Felicity turned to find Lucas approaching, a teasing smile on his face. He carried a canteen and a small bundle wrapped in cloth. "I thought you might be thirsty," he said, offering the canteen. "And Mrs. Peterson sent some of those molasses cookies you like." Felicity accepted both gratefully. "Thank you. And I wasn't talking to myself, I was talking to the baby." Lucas's smile softened as he sat beside her on the rock, careful to leave a respectful distance between them. Smart, getting the little one's opinion on important matters early. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, sharing the cookies and watching a pair of eagles soar above the distant river. "Have you decided?" Lucas asked eventually, his voice casual though Felicity could sense the tension beneath the question. She took a deep breath. "I have." Lucas waited, his eyes fixed on the horizon. "I want to stay," Felicity said simply. Lucas turned to her, hope and caution warring in his expression. "You're sure?" Felicity nodded. "Yes, at least until the baby comes. After that, we'll see where we stand." A slow smile spread across Lucas's face, transforming his features. "That's fair, and I'm glad, Felicity, truly glad." "There are things we should discuss," she continued, wanting to be clear about her expectations. "I don't want to be dependent on your charity. I need to find a way to contribute to earn my place here." Lucas frowned slightly. "This isn't about earning your keep. It's about providing a safe place for you and your child." "I understand that," Felicity assured him, "and I'm grateful beyond words. But for my own self-respect, I need to be useful. I'm not asking to work the fields or herd cattle, but there must be something I can do to help around the ranch." Lucas considered her words. "Mrs. Peterson has been saying she could use help with the household accounts and correspondence. She's getting older and her eyes aren't what they used to be. Would that suit you? You'd have a proper position with wages." Felicity smiled, pleased by the suggestion. "That would be perfect. I kept all the household accounts in Boston, and my father made sure I had a good education." "Then it's settled," Lucas said with a nod. "You'll stay on as our bookkeeper and correspondent, with room and board provided as part of your compensation." The formal arrangement made Felicity feel more comfortable with her decision. She wouldn't be a charity case but a contributing member of the household. "There's something else," Lucas added, his tone becoming more serious. "I want you to know that I have no expectations beyond what we've discussed. You'll have your own room, your privacy, and my complete respect. If after the baby comes, you decide to continue to San Francisco, I'll help you make those arrangements." Felicity was touched by his consideration. "Thank you, Lucas. That means a great deal to me." As they walked back to the house together, Felicity felt a weight lift from her shoulders. For the first time since receiving the news of Thomas's death, she had a clear path forward, a plan that felt right and good. The next morning, Lucas rode into White River Station to inform the wagon master that Felicity would not be joining the train to Fort Laramie. When he returned, he brought with him several packages wrapped in brown paper. "What's all this?" Felicity asked as he set the bundles on the kitchen table. "A few things I thought you might need," Lucas explained, suddenly looking somewhat embarrassed. "Mrs. Peterson gave me a list." Curious, Felicity unwrapped the packages to find several lengths of fabric suitable for making clothes, a pair of comfortable leather shoes, some knitting needles and yarn, and a stack of books from the general store's limited selection. "Lucas, this is too much," she protested, even as her fingers caressed the spine of a volume of Tennyson's poetry. "Nonsense," he replied firmly. "These are practical necessities, not luxuries, and the books. Well, I noticed you looking through my small library and thought you might enjoy some new reading material." Felicity blinked back tears, overwhelmed by the thoughtfulness of the gifts. "Thank you, truly." Lucas shrugged, clearly uncomfortable with her gratitude. "Mrs. Peterson will help you make whatever clothes you need. She's handy with a needle, she says." As autumn approached, Felicity settled into her role at White River Ranch. The work with the accounts was straightforward enough, though she implemented several improvements to the bookkeeping system that Lucas had been using. She also began handling correspondence with cattle buyers, supply merchants, and the bank in White River Station, freeing Lucas to focus on the physical aspects of running the ranch. Her pregnancy progressed normally, the baby growing strong and active within her. Mrs. Peterson fussed endlessly, ensuring that Felicity ate properly, rested enough, and had everything she would need when the time came. The older woman also helped Felicity sew a layette for the baby, using soft flannel Lucas had ordered specially from Bismarck. As her condition advanced, Felicity found herself increasingly dependent on Lucas for support literally and figuratively. He adapted his routine to accommodate her changing needs, building a comfortable chair with extra cushioning for her aching back, constructing a small step to help her mount and dismount from the buggy when they went into town, and always offering his arm when they walked together around the ranch. One evening in late September, they sat on the porch watching the sunset, a habit that had become precious to them both. The air was turning crisp with the approach of autumn, and Lucas had wrapped a warm blanket around Felicity's shoulders. "I've been thinking about names," Felicity said, breaking a comfortable silence. Lucas turned to her with interest. "Oh, if it's a girl, I'd like to name her after my mother, Elizabeth, and if it's a boy—" She hesitated, then continued, "I was thinking perhaps Thomas after his father." Lucas nodded, his expression thoughtful. "Those are fine names." "I want the baby to know about Thomas," Felicity explained, "to understand where they came from even if Thomas isn't here to see them grow up." "That's as it should be," Lucas agreed. "A child should know their heritage." Felicity studied his profile in the fading light. "You're a good man, Lucas Morgan. I don't know many who would be so understanding about another man's child." Lucas was quiet for a long moment before responding. "When Sarah and our son died, I thought my chance at family was gone forever. I never expected—" He paused, seeming to choose his words carefully. "I never expected to find another chance at happiness. Your baby is a blessing, Felicity, regardless of who their father was." The simple sincerity of his words moved Felicity deeply. Without thinking, she reached out and placed her hand over his where it rested on the arm of his chair. Lucas looked down at their joined hands, then slowly turned his palm upward, interlacing their fingers. It was the first intimate gesture he had initiated since she had agreed to stay, and its significance wasn't lost on either of them. They sat like that, hands clasped, watching as the stars appeared one by one in the darkening sky. No words were necessary. The touch spoke volumes about the growing feelings between them. October brought cooler temperatures and preparations for the coming winter. The ranch hands were busy bringing the cattle down from the high pastures, while Lucas worked to ensure that all buildings were weather-tight and the wood supply was sufficient for the cold months ahead. Felicity was now in her 8th month, her movements slowed by the size of her belly and the strain on her back. Despite her discomfort, she insisted on continuing her duties, though Mrs. Peterson and Lucas often conspired to lighten her workload when they thought she wasn't noticing. One crisp morning, Lucas found Felicity in the small room off the kitchen that served as the ranch office. She was seated at the desk, a ledger open before her, but her attention was focused on the window where golden aspen leaves danced in the autumn breeze. "Penny for your thoughts," he said, leaning against the door frame. Felicity turned with a smile. "I was just thinking how beautiful it is here, even as winter approaches. In Boston, autumn was my favorite season, the colors, the apples, the harvest festivals." "We have those things here too," Lucas replied. "In fact, White River Station is holding their harvest dance this weekend. Would you like to attend?" Felicity gestured ruefully at her swollen belly. "I'm hardly in a condition for dancing." "Perhaps not, but you could still enjoy the music, the food, and the company. Everyone's been asking about you since you decided to stay. It might be nice to meet some of the other families in the area before winter sets in and visiting becomes difficult." The prospect of socializing with others was appealing. Apart from Mrs. Peterson and the ranch hands, Felicity had had little contact with anyone since arriving at White River Ranch. "I'd like that," she decided, "if you're sure it wouldn't be an imposition." "Not at all. We'll take the buggy, make a day of it. Mrs. Peterson is planning to go as well, so you'll have a familiar face beside you." The harvest dance was held in the town's newly constructed community hall, a simple but sturdy building that served as church, school, and gathering place for the scattered population of White River Station. By the time Lucas helped Felicity down from the buggy, the celebration was already underway, with fiddle music spilling out into the autumn afternoon. Inside, trestle tables groaned under the weight of pies, cakes, and other homemade delicacies. Children darted between the adults, playing games of tag and showing off their best clothes. In one corner, several men had set up a cider press, producing fresh apple cider for the attendees. Lucas kept a protective hand at Felicity's elbow as they entered, guiding her through the crowd. Mrs. Peterson had gone ahead to join a group of women her age, leaving the two of them to navigate the social waters together. "Lucas Morgan, as I live and breathe," a booming voice called out. "Didn't expect to see you at a social gathering." The speaker was a large man with an impressive mustache and the weathered look of a lifelong frontiersman. He approached with a friendly smile, clapping Lucas on the shoulder with enough force to make him wince. "Hello, Bart," Lucas replied good-naturedly. "Couldn't miss the harvest dance, could I?" Bart's eyes moved to Felicity, curiosity evident in his expression. "And who might this lovely lady be?" "Felicity Rowe," Lucas introduced her. "Mrs. Rowe, this is Bartholomew Jenkins, owner of the general store and self-appointed mayor of White River Station." "Pleased to meet you, Mr. Jenkins," Felicity said with a polite smile. "Likewise, madam, likewise," Bart enthused, giving her a slight bow. "Now, Lucas, you've been keeping secrets. You didn't mention you had such a charming guest staying at your ranch." Before Lucas could respond, a woman in a practical but attractive blue dress joined them. "Bart, stop pestering the poor man," she admonished, though her tone was affectionate. "Hello, Lucas. It's good to see you." "Hello, Martha," Lucas replied, seeming relieved by the interruption. "This is Felicity Rowe." Felicity, Martha Jenkins, Bart's better half and the real brains behind the general store. Martha's warm smile immediately put Felicity at ease. "Mrs. Rowe, welcome to White River Station. I hope my husband's interrogation hasn't frightened you off already." Felicity laughed. "Not at all. It's a pleasure to meet you both." "Lucas mentioned you're staying at his ranch," Martha asked, her tone friendly rather than prying. "Yes, for the time being," Felicity confirmed. "I'm helping with the accounts and correspondence while awaiting the birth of my child." If Martha was surprised by this arrangement, she didn't show it. "How practical. Lucas's handwriting is atrocious. I can barely read his orders half the time." The conversation flowed easily from there, with Martha asking thoughtful questions about Felicity's background and expressing genuine interest in her welfare. Bart drifted away to join a group of men discussing cattle prices, while Lucas remained by Felicity's side, occasionally adding to the conversation, but mostly seeming content to let her enjoy the female companionship. As the afternoon progressed, Felicity was introduced to several other women from the surrounding farms and ranches. To her relief, none seemed to judge her for her unconventional living arrangement or her condition as a pregnant widow. The frontier fostered a practical attitude toward life circumstances, and the women were more interested in her skills and character than in conformity to Eastern social norms. When Felicity began to tire from standing, Lucas found her a comfortable seat near the refreshment table, bringing her cider and a plate of food before joining some of the other ranchers in a discussion about the coming winter. "He's different with you here," Martha Jenkins commented, taking the seat beside Felicity. "Pardon?" Felicity asked, caught off guard by the observation. Martha nodded toward Lucas, who was listening intently to something Frank was saying. "Lucas. He's been a good neighbor and a fair businessman since he arrived here, but he's always kept to himself. After he lost Sarah and the baby, he threw himself into building that ranch, barely came to town except for supplies." She turned her kind eyes to Felicity. "But now there's a light in him again. A purpose beyond just surviving." Felicity felt her cheeks warm. "We're just friends. I needed help and he offered it." Martha smiled knowingly but didn't press the issue. "Well, friend or otherwise, you've been good for him, and from the looks of it, he's been good for you too." Before Felicity could respond, the fiddle music changed tempo, and couples began to form for a lively reel. Lucas excused himself from his conversation and returned to Felicity's side. "Would you like to step outside for some air?" he asked, noticing her flushed cheeks. "It's getting warm in here." Felicity nodded gratefully. That would be lovely. The late afternoon air was refreshingly cool after the warmth of the crowded hall. Lucas led Felicity to a bench beneath a large elm tree whose leaves had turned a brilliant gold. From there, they could still hear the music but were removed from the bustle of the celebration. "Are you enjoying yourself?" Lucas asked as they sat down. "Very much," Felicity replied honestly. "Everyone has been so welcoming. Martha Jenkins is a wonderful woman." Lucas nodded in agreement. "The Jenkins are good people. Bart can be a bit overwhelming, but his heart's in the right place." They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, listening to the music and laughter from inside. "I haven't attended a dance since before the war," Lucas said suddenly. "Sarah loved them. She was a beautiful dancer, light on her feet even when she was carrying our son." It was the first time he had spoken so openly about his late wife, and Felicity recognized the significance of the moment. "Tell me about her," she encouraged gently. Lucas gazed into the distance, his expression softening with memory. Sarah was the daughter of our nearest neighbors back in Pennsylvania. We grew up together, really. She was always full of life, quick to laugh, quick to forgive. She could coax flowers from the stoniest ground and calm the most nervous colt with just a few soft words. He paused, a sad smile playing at his lips. When I went off to war, she wrote to me every week without fail. Those letters kept me sane during the worst of it. She sounds remarkable, Felicity said softly. She was. When I came home, we married right away, started planning our life together. His voice grew quieter. We were so young, so certain that we had all the time in the world. Felicity reached out and placed her hand on his arm, offering silent comfort. Lucas covered her hand with his own, the simple touch conveying gratitude for her understanding. "What about you?" he asked after a moment. "What was Thomas like?" Felicity hadn't expected the question but found she was ready to answer it. Thomas was a dreamer, always looking toward the horizon, convinced that something better was waiting just around the next bend. He worked as a clerk in Boston, but his heart was never in it. He read everything he could find about the West, the gold strikes, the open land, the possibilities. She smiled at the memory. He could paint such vivid pictures with his words that I could almost see the mountains and plains he described, even though neither of us had ever been west of the Hudson River. When he proposed that we sell everything and join a wagon train, I couldn't say no. His enthusiasm was infectious. "He must have loved you very much," Lucas observed. "In his way, yes," Felicity acknowledged. "Though sometimes I think he loved the idea of adventure more than anything else. Still, he was a good man. He would have been excited about the baby." As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the town square, Lucas reluctantly suggested that they should start for home. "It's a fair ride back to the ranch, and the nights are getting cold." The return journey was quiet, both of them lost in thoughts of the past and possibilities for the future. When they arrived at the ranch, Lucas helped Felicity down from the buggy with care. "Thank you for today," she said, looking up at him in the silver moonlight. "It was wonderful to meet everyone and to feel like part of a community again." Lucas smiled down at her, his hands lingering at her waist longer than strictly necessary. "You are part of this community now, Felicity, and part of—" He hesitated, then finished, "part of White River Ranch." The words he didn't say hung in the air between them, as tangible as the autumn breeze that stirred her hair. Felicity held his gaze, her heart beating faster despite her efforts to remain calm. "Lucas," she began, not entirely sure what she wanted to say. But at that moment, a sharp pain lanced through her abdomen, causing her to gasp and clutch at her belly. Lucas's expression immediately changed to concern. "What is it? What's wrong?" Felicity tried to catch her breath as the pain subsided. "I don't know, just a cramp, I think." Lucas frowned, his hand moving to support her elbow. "Let's get you inside. You've been on your feet too much today." Once inside, Mrs. Peterson took over, insisting that Felicity lie down while she prepared some willow bark tea for the discomfort. The older woman examined Felicity carefully before pronouncing that it was likely just the strain of the day's activities and not the beginning of labor. "Still, you'll rest tomorrow," Mrs. Peterson instructed firmly. "No accounts, no correspondence, just quiet rest. That baby's not due for another 3 or 4 weeks, and we want to keep it that way." Felicity nodded meekly, too tired to argue. The excitement of the harvest dance, combined with the emotional conversations with Lucas, had depleted her energy more than she had realized. As October gave way to November, the weather turned sharply colder. The first snow fell, a light dusting that melted by midday but served as a warning of the harsh winter to come. Lucas and the ranch hands worked tirelessly to complete the final preparations, checking fences, securing outbuildings, and ensuring that adequate feed was stored for the livestock. Felicity, now in her final month of pregnancy, found her movements increasingly restricted. The baby seemed to take up every available space within her, making it difficult to breathe deeply or find a comfortable position for sleeping. Despite Mrs. Peterson's continued admonitions to rest, Felicity insisted on maintaining her duties with the accounts, finding that the mental activity helped distract her from the physical discomfort. Lucas watched her with growing concern, often finding reasons to check on her throughout the day. He had rearranged the office to make it more comfortable for her, moving the desk closer to the window for better light and adding a footstool and extra cushions to her chair. "You're hovering again," Felicity teased one afternoon as Lucas appeared in the doorway for the third time in an hour. He had the grace to look sheepish. "I just wanted to make sure the fire was warm enough. It's getting colder out there." Felicity smiled at his transparent excuse. "The fire is perfect, as it was 20 minutes ago when you added another log. I promise I'll call if I need anything." Lucas nodded, but instead of leaving, he entered the small office and perched on the edge of the desk. "Actually, there was something I wanted to discuss with you." Something in his tone made Felicity set down her pen and give him her full attention. "What is it?" Lucas seemed uncharacteristically nervous, running a hand through his hair before speaking. "I've been thinking about what happens after the baby comes. You mentioned continuing to San Francisco eventually." Felicity's heart sank at the reminder. In the months she had spent at White River Ranch, the idea of leaving had become increasingly difficult to contemplate. She had found not just safety and comfort here, but a sense of belonging she had never experienced before. "Yes," she said carefully, "though I haven't made any firm decisions yet." Lucas nodded, his expression serious. "I understand, but I wanted you to know that there's another option, if you wanted it." Felicity held her breath, hardly daring to hope that he might be suggesting what she thought he was. "You could stay," Lucas continued, his voice steadier now. "Not just as an employee or a guest, but as—" He paused, then seemed to gather his courage. "As my wife, if you were willing." Though she had half expected it, the proposal still took Felicity by surprise. She stared at Lucas, momentarily speechless. Taking her silence as hesitation, Lucas hurried on. "I know it's sudden and perhaps inappropriate given your condition and recent widowhood, and I wouldn't expect. That is, we could have a marriage of convenience at first, if that's what you preferred. Separate rooms, no obligations. Just a legal arrangement to provide security for you and the baby." "Lucas," Felicity finally managed to say, placing her hand over his where it rested on the desk. "Is that all you want? A marriage of convenience?" Lucas met her eyes, and the emotion she saw there made her breath catch. "No," he admitted quietly. "That's not all I want, but it's all I would ask for now." Felicity felt tears welling in her eyes. "Ask for more," she whispered. For a moment, Lucas seemed not to understand. Then his expression changed, hope dawning in his blue eyes. "Felicity, I've grown to care for you deeply these past months. I never expected to feel this way again after Sarah died, but you've brought something back to life in me that I thought was gone forever." He took both her hands in his calloused fingers gentle against her skin. "I'm not a poetic man. I can't offer pretty speeches or grand gestures. But I can promise you this. If you'll have me, I'll spend every day trying to make you and your child happy. I'll be a father to the baby and a husband to you in every way you'll allow." Tears were flowing freely down Felicity's cheeks now, but they were tears of joy rather than sadness. "Lucas Morgan, I think I've been falling in love with you since that day in the barn when you said you'd help me. You've shown me what kind of man you are through your actions every day since then." She squeezed his hands. "Yes, I'll marry you. Not for convenience or security, though those are precious gifts. I'll marry you because I love you and because I can't imagine my life or my child's life without you in it." The smile that broke across Lucas's face was like the sun emerging from behind storm clouds. Without a word, he leaned forward and kissed her their first kiss. Gentle and reverent yet filled with promise, when they parted, Lucas rested his forehead against hers. "I love you, Felicity Rowe." "And I love you, Lucas Morgan." They agreed to a simple ceremony before the baby's arrival. Reverend Tompkins, who traveled a circuit between the scattered settlements, would be passing through White River Station in 2 days, and Lucas arranged for him to perform the wedding at the ranch. Martha Jenkins helped Felicity alter one of her better dresses to accommodate her pregnancy, while Bart closed the store early to attend the ceremony along with several other neighbors and friends from town. Mrs. Peterson prepared a wedding feast, enlisting Frank and Jimmy's help to decorate the main room of the ranch house with pine boughs and the last of the autumn flowers. The morning of the wedding dawned clear and cold, the ground covered in a fresh blanket of snow that sparkled in the sunlight. Standing before the hearth in the main room, with Reverend Tompkins officiating and their small community gathered around them, Lucas and Felicity exchanged simple vows of love and fidelity. "I, Lucas James Morgan, take you, Felicity Ann Rowe, to be my lawfully wedded wife," Lucas said, his voice steady and sure. "I promise to love, honor, and cherish you in sickness and in health, in good times and bad, for as long as we both shall live." When Felicity repeated her vows, her voice trembled slightly with emotion, but her eyes never left Lucas's face. As Reverend Tompkins pronounced them husband and wife, Lucas gently cupped her face in his hands and kissed her, sealing their commitment amid the approving smiles of their friends. The celebration that followed was joyful but brief, mindful of Felicity's condition. By late afternoon, the guests had departed, leaving the newlyweds to begin their life together in the quiet of the ranch house. That evening, as they sat before the fire, Lucas presented Felicity with a small wooden box. "A wedding gift," he explained as she opened it curiously. Inside was a delicate gold locket on a fine chain. When Felicity pressed the tiny catch, it opened to reveal an empty space waiting to be filled. "It was my mother's," Lucas said softly. "I thought perhaps when the baby comes we could put a small lock of their hair inside, a keepsake for you to wear close to your heart." Felicity was deeply touched by the thoughtful gift. "It's beautiful, Lucas, thank you." He helped her fasten the chain around her neck, his fingers lingering against the soft skin of her nape. "There's something else," he added, reaching into his pocket. "This is more practical." He handed her a key, small and brass. "To the strongbox in the office," he explained. "Everything I have is yours now, Felicity. The ranch, the accounts, all of it. If anything should happen to me, you and the baby will be provided for." Felicity clutched the key tightly. "Nothing is going to happen to you," she insisted, suddenly afraid. "Don't even speak of such things, not today of all days." Lucas smiled reassuringly. "It's just prudence, not premonition. A man in my position needs to ensure his family is protected, and you are my family now, Felicity. You and the baby both. Family." The word filled Felicity with a warmth that had nothing to do with the crackling fire. She had lost so much: her parents years ago, her husband more recently, her home and plans for the future. But here, in this remote corner of the Dakota Territory, she had found a new family, a new beginning. That night, despite her advanced pregnancy, Felicity and Lucas consummated their marriage with tender, careful lovemaking that left them both breathless and amazed by the depth of their connection. As they lay together afterward, Lucas's hand protectively covering the swell of her belly where their child, for he already thought of the baby as his own, rested peacefully. Felicity felt a completeness she had never known before. "What are you thinking?" Lucas murmured, his lips against her hair. Felicity smiled in the darkness. "I'm thinking that sometimes the most unexpected journeys lead to the most perfect destinations." Lucas tightened his arm around her. "Welcome home, Mrs. Morgan." 2 weeks later, during a heavy snowstorm that had confined everyone to the ranch house, Felicity went into labor. Mrs. Peterson, who had been staying at the ranch in anticipation of this moment, took charge of the birthing room while Lucas paced anxiously in the main room, periodically stoking the fire and checking the windows, as if the force of the blizzard somehow correlated with his wife's struggle. Frank and Jimmy had been sent to the bunkhouse with strict instructions not to return until summoned, leaving Lucas alone with his thoughts and fears. He had lost a wife and child once before. The possibility of history repeating itself tormented him despite Mrs. Peterson's assurances that Felicity was young and strong. The labor progressed through the day and into the night, Felicity's cries occasionally reaching Lucas, where he maintained his vigil. Each sound tore at his heart, making him feel helpless and desperate to take her pain upon himself. Finally, as the first gray light of dawn began to filter through the snow-covered windows, a different cry pierced the silence, the indignant wail of a newborn taking its first breath. Lucas froze, his heart pounding as he stared at the closed door of the bedroom. Minutes that felt like hours passed before Mrs. Peterson emerged, her face tired but beaming. "Congratulations, Mr. Morgan," she announced. "You have a fine, healthy daughter." Lucas could barely form words, and Felicity, tired but well, "She's asking for you." Lucas didn't remember crossing the room, only finding himself suddenly at Felicity's bedside, staring in wonder at the tiny bundle cradled in her arms. His wife looked exhausted, her hair damp with sweat and her face pale, but the smile she gave him was radiant. "Lucas, meet your daughter," she said softly, shifting the blanket to reveal a perfect pink face framed by wisps of dark hair. "Elizabeth," Lucas whispered, his voice thick with emotion. "Elizabeth Morgan." Felicity's eyes filled with tears at his deliberate use of their married name for the child. Though they had never explicitly discussed it, the simple act of claiming the baby as his own touched her deeply. "Would you like to hold her?" she asked. With infinite care, Lucas gathered the tiny infant into his arms. Elizabeth squirmed slightly but didn't cry, her unfocused eyes seeming to search his face. Lucas felt his heart expand in his chest, making room for this new love that was already overwhelming in its intensity. "Hello, little one," he murmured. "I'm your pa." The simple declaration made Felicity's tears spill over. In that moment, watching Lucas cradle her daughter with such tenderness, she knew without a doubt that she had made the right choice in marrying him. Thomas would always be part of her past, but Lucas and Elizabeth were her future. Mrs. Peterson discreetly left the room, allowing the new family a private moment together. Lucas sat carefully on the edge of the bed, still holding Elizabeth, and leaned over to kiss Felicity's forehead. "Thank you," he whispered. "For her, for you, for everything." Felicity reached up to touch his cheek. "I'm the one who should be thanking you, Lucas. When I told you I would be a burden, you said you would carry me proudly, and you have in every way that matters." "It's no burden to carry those you love," Lucas replied simply. "It's a privilege." As the snow continued to fall outside, blanketing the world in peaceful white, the Morgan family rested together, safe and warm in the home they had created through courage, kindness, and love. 5 years later, on a bright spring morning, Felicity sat on the porch of White River Ranch, watching as Lucas led a small pony across the yard with Elizabeth perched proudly on its back. At 4.5, their daughter was fearless and determined, with her mother's auburn hair and her father's clear blue eyes. "Look, Mama," Elizabeth called out, waving excitedly. "I'm riding all by myself." "I see you, sweetheart," Felicity called back, smiling at her daughter's enthusiasm. "You're doing wonderfully." Lucas glanced up, catching Felicity's eye with a warm smile that still made her heart skip a beat after all these years. Their life together hadn't always been easy. The harsh Dakota winters, occasional drought, and the normal challenges of ranch life had tested them. But they had faced each obstacle together, their love growing stronger with each passing season. White River Ranch had prospered under their joint management. Lucas's skill with cattle and horses, combined with Felicity's head for business, had turned the modest operation into one of the most successful in the territory. They had added to the house, built a proper schoolroom where Felicity taught Elizabeth and the children of their ranch hands, and established a reputation for fairness and hard work throughout the region. As Felicity watched her husband and daughter circle the yard, her hand drifted to her stomach, where another child was just beginning to make its presence known. She hadn't told Lucas yet, wanting to be certain before sharing the news. But now, seeing the joy on his face as he guided Elizabeth, Felicity could hardly contain her secret any longer. When the riding lesson ended, Lucas lifted Elizabeth from the pony's back and set her on her feet. "Go help Jimmy fill the water troughs," he instructed. "Remember what I told you about taking care of animals before yourself," Elizabeth nodded solemnly. "It's our responsibility," she recited. "They depend on us." "That's my girl," Lucas said with a proud smile, watching as she skipped off toward the barn where Jimmy was waiting. He joined Felicity on the porch, settling into the chair beside hers with a contented sigh. "She's a natural on horseback," he commented. "Takes after her mother." Felicity laughed. "I think you mean her father. I was a city girl, remember? I had never even seen a horse up close until I was nearly grown." Lucas took her hand, his thumb tracing circles on her palm. "How are you feeling today? You seemed tired at breakfast." "I'm fine," Felicity assured him. "Actually, I'm better than fine." She turned to face him, her eyes shining. "Lucas, I have something to tell you." The look of dawning realization on his face was everything she had hoped for. "Felicity, are you?" She nodded, unable to contain her smile. "Yes, Dr. Matthews confirmed it yesterday when I was in town. We're going to have another baby, probably around harvest time." Lucas's expression of pure joy was identical to the one he had worn when she had told him about her first pregnancy years ago. He had never treated Elizabeth as anything but his own daughter, legally adopting her soon after their marriage. But Felicity knew this baby would hold a special significance for him, a child created from their love. "A baby," he repeated, his voice filled with wonder. He reached out to place his hand gently on her still flat stomach. "Have you told Elizabeth yet?" "Not yet. I wanted you to be the first to know." Lucas leaned over to kiss her, his lips soft and reverent against hers. "I love you, Felicity Morgan. More today than yesterday, and not as much as I will tomorrow." "And I love you," she replied, resting her forehead against his. "For carrying me when I needed it most, and for walking beside me ever since." As they sat together, watching the sun climb higher over the land they had nurtured together, Felicity reflected on the journey that had brought her to this place. From a frightened widow hiding in an abandoned barn to a confident ranch wife and mother, she had traveled a path she never could have imagined. Life on the frontier was never certain, never easy. But with Lucas by her side and their children to carry their legacy forward, Felicity faced the future with hope and gratitude. What had once seemed like the end of all her dreams had proven to be merely the beginning of a greater adventure, one built on love, trust, and the courage to begin again.